I was just so I was going through some of the things to try to see what fitted more like the expectations of people and the anger and all that. And it's just I feel so blessed for the opportunity to actually talk to people, so many people. And they were so open and so, yeah, so there, so present. I had there was a session this morning with other people from Now What. They did something called a Journey to Now, and they were exploring also the energy around the climate summit and what's happening in the world. And we kind of had the feeling that in the past few weeks there's been some kind of activation of heart energy, and it's very much the feeling I had at the COP as well, despite all the frustration and all the disappointment that people are feeling now. There seems it felt like we were put into some kind of incubator. It's like everybody there together. Let's put all these amazing, weirdly different people together and see what happens when they kind of touch each other in some way. Yeah, and I think I've told several people. Some of my fondest memories are talking to the police, and I have to say, particularly with the Glaswegian police. And I remember one evening, just bringing each other tears of being moved by just talking with this guy. I just went to ask for directions, and I made a point of trying to really reach anytime I could to really reach across and talk to police people. And so if I had to ask for directions, then I would ask a police person. And then this guy, he just said, no, and he was incredibly helpful. So I just stayed and we chatted for a bit, and then he was just like, I'm so worried about the community and how people are struggling. There's so much problems with youth and homelessness and all that, and I do this because of that, and also saying that they felt quite lonely, that that they feel this is so important, but they're because of the job and there and all that happens. I'm not saying that there's not really horrible things that are coming from the side of the police, but there was this divide between us and them, and then we ended up saying, I know that you have a heart and that you are here because you're worried about our world today, and it was just so beautiful. It was, it felt like, yes, there's some things like we can break down these structures and reach out and do something different. So those moments were super precious. Yeah. Yeah, and then I'll just gonna start. So my plan is I have some pictures and some videos, and I'm just gonna talk through what is there. And please just stop me anytime you want to ask a question, or as I said, I'm gonna try to make some space for digesting if that is necessary. So people make Glasgow, and I think it's quite a cliche somehow, and I've seen this picture a lot in different places, and I have to say it's true. I'm in love with the spirit of Glaswegian people, and I think it's partly because they've really gone through shit. The city has been reshaped, remodeled. There's a highway that just breaks through and demolished communities. I spoke with one man that didn't want to be recorded, and he was saying how when he was little, there was still a lot of the community where he grew up and his parents grew up. And they were there. It was a poor community, but they had something. Um, they had this sense of tribe, of community, of working together. And when the highway came, they just, they just made a huge impact on the structure, and they just removed all the houses and they made these enormous housing estates that, just looking at them, you feel like, oh, I mean, oof, how can we even think about the climate when this is happening? So it's I think it, and he was very heartful as well, and saying how important he felt that having a community is for tackling any issues, including the climate, of course. So yeah, people make Glasgow. That's my first take home message. I'm sure that's the case for every place in the world as well. But there was something really special about Glaswegian hospitality and people. So this today, the idea is a bit to explore what did we bring to the COP, and not just people who were there, but maybe everybody who is interested. And I think there were lots of expectations and lots of assumptions and lots of agendas as well within the official bits and outside. Um, and this is nice. This is Nicklas Adamsson, and there's a little story, of course. On when I said in Now What that I was going to be at the COP and looking for people, stories, and stuff like that, Akiko, who's another very important pillar of Now What community, she said, "Oh, there is this friend of mine, Nicklas, who he's going to be in Glasgow, and I want to put you in touch so that you can meet each other and have a chat." So I wrote to Nicklas, and I didn't get a reply. And then I was at a meeting there, and then who do I find? But this Swedish person who we say, yeah, it would be nice to have a chat, this and that. And then suddenly I ask him, "Are you Nicklas?" And he's like, "Yes, I am." I said, "Okay, I'm Akiko's friend." So yeah, we didn't need to write emails to each other because we just met serendipitously. And so this is his story. I'm here at the Quaker Meeting House with Nicklas from Sweden. A beautiful connection through Now What as well. And yeah, I want to know what brought you here, Nicklas, and a bit of your story.
I have been a part of the Swedish walk for future that started in Vadstena in Sweden the 19th of July and walked all the way to Glasgow. Me and a friend joined the walk in Amsterdam for about a little bit more than 3 weeks, and we have been a part of the Walk for Future since then. And we arrived here this Friday, and it was very nice coming to Glasgow and try to be a part of the COP26 in different ways, mostly with NGOs and so.
And how do you see? What do you expect is coming out of the COP26?
I might be quite pessimistic because the world leaders are talking very much about solutions, but as we saw after the Paris Agreement, there hasn't been so much um, done, and that's why I think it's so important that people who are demanding change, demanding climate justice, are gathering in different connections to work together to try to push the politicians so they take the responsibility that they are actually paid for to take. Yeah, and if if we don't do enough today, we have to do much more tomorrow. So I think it's quite urgent. We must make this transition to another society. Yeah.
And how are you finding the connections with different people in Glasgow? Is it working to find those networks?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to reach out. We have tried to walk through Glasgow. We constantly get caught in the police web, and they say you can't go here. You must go around and turn around. So it's had been a quite difficult task to move. So, but I begin to realize what way you can walk and find these different spots. So. It begins to be easier. I think. Yeah.
And in Sweden, is there something like I see there's a lot of energy focused now on the COP, but what about after? Is there something that you feel is important for you locally to do, and that can be kind of an inspiration for other people?
I think it's after the COP that the main work begins. Then we have to do this, begin to transform, and that's why it's so vital that the world leaders really take their responsibility and show people that they mean business. And I think another crucial thing is people coming together and do things together at a local basis. And in Sweden, we try to grow together. We try to build a community together. So I think the more people realize that this transition is really at hand, you must do it, then we can be many more that connect with each other and work together. And I think that's the main solution, this togetherness.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else you would like for the world to know?
I don't know, but the Quakers have a saying, and that I feel is very, very nice. While I have been walking to Glasgow by Walk for Future, and they say you have to speak truth to power, and that means that you maybe walk to a place where these powerful people are. And I think that's suitable with this pilgrimage. We walked to Glasgow, and here's the world leaders, and we must speak truth to power and tell them that we want climate justice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nicklas, and good luck. Yes, so welcome, Tanya and Francois. I think, I would love to know from if anybody here would like to say something about if they had any expectations around the COP26 and what they were. I had regarding the official part, I think I had very little, if any, which I think was quite good. It was good for me to just be there without an expectation. I had an agenda, but I didn't have any expectations, I think. It's also good. Francois, yes.
I don't think I had any expectation either. I had a hope, maybe, that something would be different from what it's been in the past, but I didn't really expect anything to come out of it, and largely because I think it's asking the wrong people or partly the wrong people. Well, I'm not sure I could say it's the wrong question. Maybe it's the right question, but it's the wrong. It's asking the right questions to the wrong people, and we need to shift our thinking on that. But on that, because I think a lot of people do have expectations, and then of course are disappointed or either frustrated or conversely delighted, depending on what the expectations were on any outcome. But I think it would be wrong to think. I mean, it is a turning point in the history, but it would be wrong to think it's the only turning point in a history. It's the only way we can change where we're going. Yeah. And yeah, if I had the expectation that this would be the turning point, or had expectation that it should have been the turning point in the past, then I would be an extremely depressed person. But I'm not. And maybe I'm disillusioned. Maybe we're all disillusioned. But I still have. I still have hope. But I don't think relying. It's this us and them sort of syndrome, when you're thinking, oh, they are doing this to us and so on. And of course, there is an element of that, but we're not going to solve it by that by that way. So that's why my expectations were not not high, or that didn't really have any expectation in two senses. One, because I'm also partly a cynic and didn't really expect anything to come out of it in any case, but also in the sense that I feel it would be wrong to expect something, because it takes the focus and responsibility away from us.
Right. Yeah.
So
that resonates. Right. I'll go back to my sharing. So that one of the things that was happening outside. So I was not part of the climate talks, of course. That's for the elite that you are talking about, Francois. So outside, there was the expectation of being listened, which is beautiful, and I think to a great degree it was fulfilled. So one of the big asks was to act on the science. Basically, that the politicians and the decision makers should listen to the science, to the data that is saying how bad the things are and what the solutions could be. I personally find it important and a bit tricky as well, because again, it takes some things away from our agency. So I more resonate with what Nicklas and you, Francois, were saying about, the coming together and doing something ourselves is important. In that sense of people coming to Glasgow in the hope, with the expectation and the hope of being listened, and with the rage and the frustration of what's happening. I mean, not in the future. So that for me, that was something that I found really affirming in these 2 weeks, is that there was such an amount of conversations, interactions, demonstrations about the fact that the crisis is not in the future. It's not about what's going to happen in 2030 or in 2050. It's what's happening right now for most of the world. And I would add, including the UK. So most people say, oh, well, it will come here. And I'm like, no, it is here. People who are depending on the land, they see the changes. They know how that we have, I think, the third or fourth year in a row that there is a record drought. It's not happening just in a faraway exotic land. It's happening everywhere. It's just perhaps because we are more separate from the elements to some degree that we don't seem to see it. So this was a demonstration, an act, a beautiful act organized around the protesting the drilling for oil in the Okavango Delta in Africa. And before I do that, I do want to share the link to what Nicklas was saying on his website, the Walk for Future. And this is about the Okavango Delta. I'm so well prepared.
This is the development we are looking for as Africa, as Namibia, as Botswana. After we have so long been the stewards of, or provided steward leadership to this our environment. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleading with you to say no to Recon Africa. No to oil exploration and gas. No! It is not fashionable in Europe. It is not fashionable in China. It is not fashionable in America. It's not fashionable in Canada. What makes us believe it will be fashionable and is of economic viability when it comes to Africa, particularly in Botswana and Namibia, who are the riparian states of the Okavango Delta, the jewel of the Kalahari, the biodiversity and the amazing cultures and people who are living there. So, with those few remarks, ladies and gentlemen, let's say no to Recon Africa and its exploration work. No! Thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you.
Yeah, so I had, again, so many things were happening serendipitously. I ended up spending quite a lot of time in for different reason with somebody who's actively organizing things in the UK around the Okavango. Well, actually, in the UK, he's based in the UK, but he's working internationally. Trying to make this known and trying to find ways of stopping Recon Africa, which is actually a Canadian company, from drilling in this amazing area. And I found a beautiful picture here from there, and not only putting that area in danger from a natural world perspective, but all the people who live there, the people as Tikhwebe, I'm sure I can't pronounce his name properly, as he was so beautifully saying there in his speech. It's removing the people who are actually not still with the wisdom and the knowledge of how to keep the land alive and how to prevent the destruction that has happened in so many other places from happening there. And so it's my intention, and I hope it's going to happen, to have a series of conversations with the people who are actively working in this area and trying to put a stop to Recon Africa if we can in some way, or at least, I don't know, it's not one of the big oil companies, so maybe there is some hope, and it's something very big. But I think if there's something even small that we can do, then I would love to try. So there was a lot of fossil fuel in the COP. I was surprised, I don't know, but depressed by the fact that the largest delegation in the official summit was the fossil fuel industry. It's yeah. So I think that's one of the agendas that was being brought. That was one of the hopes, I think, that was being brought to the official part of the COP, was to how do we keep business as usual? How do we greenwash the solutions, the agenda of different countries, the politics, and also convince people that it's okay. It's okay to continue as we are. Ooh, yes, I am there. Yeah, so that was a bit of a blow, and there was a lot of there was always this kind of dance between what was happening inside the blue zone, where with all the talks, and what was happening outside. So as people knew that this was happening, that the fossil fuel industry was so amazingly represented, there was a lot of actions and information and networking happening outside around the fossil fuel industry. And with climate justice in general. And one of the other big actors that was outside on the streets and in many conversations and inside was Stop Ecocide. Stop Ecocide, I presume most of you know of that organization. They have been for quite a long time tirelessly trying to make laws that include the rights of nature, and that finding ways of actually having those laws being part of the judiciary, and yeah, that we can stop what is being done, that by having nature and the earth represented as a legal person, as a legal entity, then there can be ways of within the legal system stopping the crimes against nature, basically. So this is the website is there, and during the COP there was some support for acknowledging ecocide law. I still feel that it's such a big mountain to climb. So that the laws are there, the laws are beautiful, and I mean they are the sketch, the draft for a law is there, and it's really beautiful, and the implementation. I was asking people within a different tribunal at the COP26, how do we implement this? How do we actually make those laws become reality? And there was no answer. Before I move on, though, I would love to read something from the Stop Ecocide founder, Polly Higgins. The rules of our world are laws, and they can be changed. Laws can restrict or they can enable. What matters is what they serve. Many of the laws in our world serve property. They are based on ownership. But imagine a law that has a higher moral authority, a law that puts people and planet first. Imagine a law that starts from first, do no harm, that stops this dangerous game and takes us to a place of safety. Yeah, that would be just amazing. So more on the oil, more on the fossil fuel. There was a lot of information, a lot of action, a lot of coming together to denounce the investors that still make this possible. That after agreeing during the last COP, the previous COP, that they will stop or they will reduce the amount of investment into fossil fuel companies, it's still increasing. It's still being condemned, not condemned, sorry, condemned, as in it's still happening. Too many tabs. And the main target, the main actor in this was JP Morgan. And this is in front of one of the offices. And you can see that as most of the time, one of the largest parts of the demonstrations was the amount of police. I think the estimate is that there were 30,000 police being deployed daily. And so one of the things that happened is that there was every day there was some kind of action in front of JP Morgan's offices. And I guess, what are the expectations there? What is the hope for that? I think from what I heard and from what I felt when I was there with Extinction Rebellion particularly, is an idea of putting some pressure, but not with expectations that JP Morgan will act on that, although there might be something there, but also making this heard, making this a narrative that is not hidden from people. So just being able to be out there doing things that are sometimes surprising, sometimes beautiful, very often very moving. It's a way, I think, of telling the truth and allowing these facts, these things are often hidden from public view to be seen. So one of the things that was happening was a night vigil, and you can imagine there wasn't many people there, but there was always somebody. And I didn't stay. I had to commute between Glasgow and Edinburgh, but the next morning they were still there. And you could always tell where something was happening because there was a trail of police to find where the demonstrations were happening.
She's still here.
Yes. The other thing I saw happening was kind of the hope of, in this case, the Bank of Scotland, to piggyback on the fact that the summit was happening here, to, and this is my interpretation, to bring in the ideas that people were sensitized, people were being exposed to all the problems that are happening, the need for something, a change that makes us less harmful for the environment. So all of Glasgow and a lot of Edinburgh is absolutely filled with propaganda, with advertisement for what feels like really bad greenwashing. So for in this case, the question is time for a bigger garden, which it sounds really beautiful. Is one of the things that we can do together is to grow plants, to grow food. But this is not about having a community garden or growing food. It's about getting a larger mortgage so you can buy a larger house with a private garden. And the other one that I love is keep nature natural. More nuclear power means more wild spaces like these. So trying to, again, use that sensitivity that is being made so that is brought to the surface by all what is happening, so that consortia or big companies use that as a way of advertising their goods. And there was also a lot of businesses making a profit from the amount of people. This is the Apple store in Glasgow, and well, of course, if you have, I don't know how many hundreds of people there, then you will have also more customers. So there was a lot of shopping. There was a lot of the expectation that this is also a fair that will bring a lot of consumerism to the city. And there was a lot of information, a lot of rage, a lot of heartbreak. One of the things that was also very beautiful was a group of rickshaw drivers who were distributing information about different organizations. And one of the ones that really touched my heart is the Environmental Justice Foundation. And again, one of the things that was very evident for me during these 2 weeks is that people were bringing, I don't know, the expectation perhaps, or the agenda, or the knowledge that without addressing the general social injustice that we have, there's not going to be any way that we will address anything relating to the climate, because those two things are so incredibly interconnected. So there was a lot of the activism that I saw outside was demanding social justice, and not just through not the social justice that is harmed through climate change, but the social justice that is harmed through our systems. And that was quite an important part, I think, of the huge networking that was happening outside. And before I take a small break, so this is part of their manifesto, one of the manifestos from the Environmental Justice Foundation.
People around the world, in the big cities around the world, will not understand before it gets close to you down there. We see it up here now. It's something happening. We are doing wrong, everyone. We are destroying this planet, this way of living.
We know that the climate crisis is an existential threat to our way of life and our planet, and if allowed to continue on its current course, would change our world beyond recognition. But it's not too late to roll back the worst impacts of our heating world. The solutions already exist to turn it around. By focusing our efforts on climate justice, decarbonising our economies, and employing nature-based solutions, we can achieve a net zero carbon economy by 2035 and protect people from the worst impacts of the climate crisis.
Climate change is definitely a human rights issue because it's a problem created by human beings, particularly rich human beings, because of their lifestyle and the carbon emissions associated with those lifestyles. And the people who are going to suffer the consequences are generally poor people living in the most vulnerable parts of the planet. And so it's a problem caused by the rich, and the people who will suffer are the poor. And that is a moral issue. That is something that is not right.
এখন আমরা এইভাবে মোটামুটি 10 থেকে 15 মিনিট 20 মিনিটের ভিতরে আমাদের পানি খামার ক্ষেত জুড়ে আমরা একেবারে মানে ঘরের ভিতরে গলা সমান পানি যখন হয়ে যায় তখন আমরা চালে উঠছিলাম। কিছু মানুষ সাথে আসতে পারেনি, কিছু মানুষ ওই যে ঝড়ে কিছু মানুষ মারাও গিয়েছে।
It's having its most pernicious and egregious impact on the people who've done the very least to contribute to it. And there's no question that it is a massive violation of their human rights. And what we're struggling with now is figuring out how can we prevent those impacts from getting worse in the future, and how can we actually alleviate the impacts that these people are already suffering.
Issues of climate justice must be central to the task of halting global heating. The 50 least developed nations contribute less than 1% to global carbon emissions, and rich countries should shoulder the cost of the loss and damage they are suffering as a result of climate collapse.
Basically, compensation to the poor and vulnerable people of this planet who have suffered unthinkable losses as a result of climate change. So that just has to happen. And you know, we're coming up to COP26 hosted by the UK this year. If we don't come up with some kind of system for loss and damage after 29 years, then every single negotiator should walk away from that meeting hanging their heads in shame.
As well as loss and damage, wealthier nations and businesses must commit to measures which enable truly sustainable development for all, such as renewable technology transfers, increased spending on climate action, and the inclusion of marginalised communities, including Indigenous peoples, in the decision-making process. Global heating is already forcing millions of people from their homes and creating climate refugees. Since 2008, weather-related hazards have displaced around 21 million people annually. That's 41 people every single minute. They must be afforded legal protection by the international community to define their fundamental rights and status.
Sometimes climate very often won't be the sole factor, but it will be potentially the factor at the end of the day, the aggravating factor that means that people have to move, and have to move in big numbers in the future.
Ben, did you have a comment? It's nice to see you again.
How's my audio?
It's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm sensing the irony of sitting here in my car, not only am I mean, it's a Prius, but it's not electric. And look what I have right there that I just picked up. That's probably filled with. You can't see what that is?
No, your image is frozen.
Oh well, it's. I'll turn the video off. It's a canister of propane gas for our grill that probably was fracked in Pennsylvania or Ohio. And I was thinking, there's no, for those of us that think that grilling is still acceptable, are we supposed to make our own charcoal from sustainably harvested trees? No, I feel so complicit in my privileged way of living, and I think there. I've heard a whole theme of that the politicians aren't going to save us, so we have to do it ourselves, which on the one hand, makes a lot of sense. On the other hand, we are to some extent, we're embedded in these systems that give us very limited choices, or at least make it hard to make choices that really have a low impact. There was a radio bit some years back about a family that was living out in LA area that was trying to do their very, very best to have a small ecological footprint. I mean, they were really doing everything right, biking to work and driving the right cars, living in this relatively small house, small family, and all of this stuff. And they were still, it was still per capita the equivalent of 2.5 Earths worth of ecological footprint if everyone lived the way they did. Now maybe things have gotten a little better. That was probably 15 years ago that study was done, or maybe close to 20. But I don't know. I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about this polarization and your story of talking to the Glaswegian police, and how moved you were by that. I'm connecting that with this idea. We were talking about mycelium a lot, and you were talking about the damage that plowing does to the connections in the soil. And in the Bioneers conference that happened just last week, and I landed in a little bit of that, they were talking about the same things. And so this question, what's the metaphorical equivalent of plowing that's going on, where all these vital connections are being severed and we have a depleted ecosystem as a result? And I think it is this polarization. At least that's one form. So I took heart in your story of the conversation you had there, and I wonder, is there something, do we have to reach the JP Morgan Chases as well, and even the oil companies at some point have to give up or be defeated, but I think some of them, some portion of the powers that be have to decide that they're going to be part of the transformation and change their roles. It doesn't have to be all of them, but I think at least a few would create a huge shift. And so those are some thoughts I have. I think that could happen too. I think that's possible.
I think that it may even be happening, and maybe, I hear a lot, especially recently, about how few people, how few players are required in order to make something change. So sometimes you just need a very large one to do something, and then there is kind of a cascade around it. I still believe that the system that we are embedded in is not, needs a total change. But that's a different story. I didn't see that in the COP. There's something about that last. Thank you so much, Ben. And I think there's also something about perfection, and I think there was an expectation or there is an undercurrent of expectation also around the COP of, although a lot of people said, including people I work with, that COP will fail and all this and whatever that means. You know, the diet, the conference and the it's not going to be enough and nothing is going to happen and all that. There was still kind of a huge disappointment, and I think there's an expectation of perfection. There's an expectation of, like what you were saying, that you bought that fuel for grilling. And maybe, you know, there's one step that one can change. I'm not saying, oh, it's okay that you do that, but there is the fact that we can't just suddenly become saints. We can't suddenly become people who live with one or less than one earth. It shouldn't stop us trying, because there is, if we get hung up with that idea of perfection, then it's just paralyzing. At least that's how I feel when I say, oh no, this thing I'm writing, it has to be perfect. So I'm never going to write it because it's never going to be perfect. Or maybe it will be as perfect as it needs to be, but I need to relax around it in order to start. So I remember when sometimes I'm really trying to live without plastic, and I still have loads of plastic around me. And sometimes I would be in my tent, which is kind of, it's my house, that's my the equivalent I have of a permanent residency. It's made of plastic, and it has allowed me to be in places and to live a life that is quite soft on the environment to some degree. And yet sometimes the idea that I've been in a house of plastic has prevented me from doing things. And that's the part where I think it's really helpful to relax, not to the point of then saying, okay, it doesn't matter, I'm going to get everything made of plastic, but to say, you know, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm not letting go of the discomfort of doing something like that, but it's not going to prevent me from doing other things. So I think that is something that I also saw a bit of that in the COP. And there was like a culture, and maybe it comes from that mycelial interaction, I don't know, of enoughness, of, you know, we're doing what we can, and lots of people bringing in their projects, which sometimes they were a one-person project, sometimes it started as a one-person project and they grew up into something massive. So that video that I just shared before, I'm just gonna share it with you in the chat. I think it has a beautiful message. There are some things about it that I find slightly, that they rub me the wrong way, like the amount of technology that it brings. And that brings me into one of the highlights for me during these 2 weeks was the International Rights of Nature Tribunal, which was happening in Glasgow, not in the official part of the COP, but it's something that used that energy and used the fact that a lot of the people who came to Glasgow anyway, who are part of the tribunal, were there, and they could have a meeting all together. It was a really interesting exposition. So here there was actually a court case against false solutions. The false solutions that are being portrayed as a way out of climate crisis, that most of the time rely on technologies, a lot of them which are not yet designed. And the tribunal actually has a verdict, which was, you can read it in detail. They do find the UN, a lot of the members that have signed that had signed these declarations, they find them guilty of crimes against nature because of adhering to the idea of using false solutions. It's quite interesting. It's really beautiful, and again, I get stuck with the question of, okay, we have this. How do we implement this? How do we make this actually a law that goes beyond a recommendation? So at the moment, these verdicts are phrased as in very much like the UN talks. This is a recommendation, and countries are free to adhere to it. I still think that it's important to give voice to these tribunals and these processes, because I still have the hope that they may become something standard. And I'm not going to, there's a very, all the, thank you, Tanya, as well. You can actually watch the whole court case. I was there for part of it, and it's quite interesting. I think I am going to move on. It's a bit of music. We gotta take we gotta take care of our precious land. We gotta take care of the elephants. We gotta take care of our precious sea. We gotta take care of our enemies. We gotta take care of our precious seas. Gotta take care of our mountains, our fountains, our land, and of our animals. You gotta take care. Gotta take care. This land of ours is not only for us, but so for our children and our children's children. We gotta take care of our God's creation, be close stewards of what we have been given, and in the land we live in. Gotta take care of our mountains and our seas. Gotta take care of our families. Be good fathers and mothers, sisters and brothers. You gotta take care of our animals and our land. Gotta take care. Look at the little birds. Gotta take care of our sparrows, of the little robins. Don't throw your rubbish. Yes. So this guy, Jean-Baptiste, you might have seen him in some of the demonstrations. He's been a voice of denunciation, of stop climate crime, of just being there, a presence that is just there. And he's called Jean-Baptiste, and he has been saying many of the COP summits before. And I had a chat with him, which I unfortunately didn't record, but actually it's great because it was just really beautiful. And he was just saying how, for him, a lot of so he's doing this just because he feels an enormous love for the earth. And I had the sense, and he said it to some degree, that it's just about love. It's just about like an inner transformation that everybody is able to do. And I don't know if it's enough. And now I'm thinking, if we have this enormous love and we're still using all these resources, how does that kind of come together? In any case, his expectation of the COP26 was that, the official part maybe was going to do something, but I think he was there mainly to touch people's hearts and to just persevere in some way. And I remember the first time I saw him in Glasgow, he was in a kettle. The police comes and prevents the part of a demonstration to move, so that makes people quite uneasy. And but he was just there standing in front of the police with his incredibly heavy. He has two banners, so he had one on each hand, and he had this amazing smile. He was just smiling, and he wasn't shouting, but he has this voice that just kind of carries, and he was just being. I don't remember now what he was saying, but he was saying something like, we have to save, like what the song was saying, we have to save these, we have to be nice, we have to be this and that. And then I think it makes a difference. It makes a difference also for how people behave and what the energy is, and what we start then asking of the people we believe are on the other side of the fence, or the other side of the blue zone, the other side of the decision making. So I think, what he brought was a lot of energy, and the idea that one person can do something, even if it's just the excuse is perhaps to be there, having a message, but then you go and talk to people, and that's what I saw him doing. So going a bit, so this, the other thing that was brought as an intention and as an expectation was part of a project called the Camino to COP, which is somewhere here. And again, I felt really blessed to spend a lot of time with some of the people who walked, some of them for a very, very long way. And as they did that, they did as a community, as a group, and they talked to people on the way. They collected the expectations, the hopes, and the messages of people and brought them to Glasgow. And this is Helen Barrett, I think, if I don't remember wrongly, talking about that.
So, yes, we walked to Glasgow, but we also took many, many, many messages with us from the very start at St James's Piccadilly, onwards through the communities we walked through, and from the communities we came from. We asked them for their messages for COP26, and we asked them to write them on ribbons so that we could bring them to COP26 and leave them here as expressions of the world's hopes for this conference. Each morning we would read a selection. Give thought to those who cannot speak their fears and hopes, those with learning difficulties, especially. Be bold, be wise, be kind. The earth gives us all we need abundantly. May we treat our living planet with love and respect and give back to life. We are nature. Let's work together generously to save and share our beautiful another let's. let's all awaken to the beautiful truth of the interconnectedness of all things.
One more.
We need compassionate action, and we need it now.
And they were carried, some of these wishes, there were hundreds, if not thousands of them. They were carried by many people, not only by the people who walked the Camino. And this is in one of the, I think this was the Friday for Futures demonstration. And I really like this woman holding that placard saying, "No cop out, grow a pair." And they were carrying some of those. It was quite ironic. Very often, when in some of the big actions against the fossil fuels, there was sometimes 2 helicopters just standing all the time on top of us, and I couldn't but just feel the amount of fuel that was being wasted because it was all very peaceful on those moments. I'm not saying that there wasn't times where, but the police presence was so big, they really did not need helicopters. And just the irony of having such an amazingly wasteful machine on top of a demonstration saying how bad the extraction of fossil fuels is it was just, yeah, Monty Python couldn't have done it better. And these are the ribbons. They were tied in several occasions at the entrance of the Blue Zone, where the delegates were, the talks were happening on behind this fence.
Sorry, coming through.
And the hopes, the wishes, the support, the demands, really, again, they may feel sometimes like it's just words, but I think they carry a certain energy, a heart, something that I think goes beyond just being words. There was a lot of, I think, a lot of wisdom in the things that I saw written in different placards. I love this one saying, "Stop distracting us." Yes, it's the feeling I have also from those discussions inside. Let's just get on with our lives without all this distraction. And almost there to finish. I just want to bring some of the beauty and the incredible creativity and skill that people put into the art they brought into the demonstrations, and a way again of perhaps touching people's hearts, or perhaps calling attention, or perhaps just finding a way to start a conversation. This is the grooviest skeleton I've ever seen. One of my favorite flags. And last but not least,
This is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, the sphere is amazing.
Yes, you made it. Did you make it?
Yes, I built it with my son, and he walked also with me 7 weeks from Germany to Glasgow.
In the
In
sphere.
the sphere, yes. Also, my son and me, we
just-
walked together and cycled together up to Liverpool, and then my wife came and we walked from Dublin to the COP.
Wow. Wow. Do you mind telling me
it's the
what you feel about being here?
Yes, I feel very honored because in every city we've been, people were so helpfully and enjoyed to help us because it's a good mission that we do. The promise walk that everyone can take care of our future a little bit, starting with a little promise. And the promises can grow, and the people who give promises can grow and feel connected like spheres all around the world. And it works really good because there are so many newspapers and TV stations who bring this promise work all over the world that I was very impressed that it's people like this kind of walk.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yes, so you can make a promise about something you want to do, like, I don't know, perhaps making your own coal or trying to. There are some really funky videos about how easy it is if you have a fireplace. You just need a good metal box where you can put, and you can even make charcoal for painting if you have some twigs. So there is so much. I think there is a lot of solutions there for things, small things, big things, and it's the same one. Not the same. So that's me. Was a little, yeah. I think I brought, I again, like I was saying at the beginning, I didn't have much expectations about the declarations, the official declarations and stuff. I did expect to, to meet people and listen to them and see what they're doing and all that. And wow, I did get so much of that. Yeah, and I expected to find a lot of pain and suffering, and there was so much of that. And at the same time, the people I met that were expressing that, they brought such a dignity and such a resolve and ingenuity in how they are dealing with their lives. It was such a big lesson. Yeah. And now I'll shut up. I would love to listen to any of you if you feel like.